In the future, the air became so polluted that everyone had to wear masks whenever they went outside, and every home needed an air filtration system. A company called Ethra developed a drug known as Armadex, which allowed people to breathe without a mask for up to 6 hours. However, it was extremely expensive, and only the elite could afford it. Inside a dark laboratory, Solomon was recording a video explaining that Ethra was planning to distribute Armadia for free. Once that happened, people would become desperate, and that was exactly when Solomon wanted to begin his new experiment. He knew that increasing the dosage of his compound could trigger a fatal immune response, but he believed it was necessary to save humanity. At the same time, Solomon received an alert stating that the last green zone on Earth had become contaminated. This meant that within 18 months, 83% of the population would be at risk of exposure to deadly toxins. Solomon's partner, Spider, noticed that their lab was under surveillance, so she came up with a plan to protect their research. A new drug called Blue had become incredibly popular, and she suggested coloring their compound the same shade. If the police ever caught them, they would assume they were ordinary drug dealers. Meanwhile, Isla worked as a fashion model for Ethra and promoted the company's products. Her mother had once been a model as well, but she had taken her own life, and Isla had stepped into her place. This caused jealousy among the other models because Isla was considered a new Bobby, a term used to describe unconventional individuals. Isla kept her breathing medication inside her mother's pendant. During a break at work, she received a message from her boyfriend, Tully, saying he wouldn't be able to go out with her because he was busy working. After overhearing the other models gossiping about her behind her back, she texted her friend Gina and asked her to hang out. What Isla didn't know was that Gina was with Tully because the two of them were having an affair. Tully wanted to tell Isla the truth, but Gina reminded him that it was the anniversary of Isla's mother's death, so they agreed to wait. Later, Tully went to a rundown neighborhood to buy stimulants for a party while Gina waited in the car. Isla called Gina to complain about Tully because she couldn't reach him and told her she was forced to take the train. Gina invited her to the party, but Isla wasn't in the mood. After ending the call, Isla overheard a homeless man at the station saying that the polluted air was God's punishment for what humanity had done to the planet. At the same time, Tully surprised the dealer with an unexpected visit. No one was supposed to know where the man lived, but Tully had used a tracking program to find him. While waiting for the merchandise to be prepared, he watched a television interview featuring Eric, Ethra's head of research, who was answering questions from callers. At first, the questions were ordinary, but then a distorted voice asked about the origin of Armadia and claimed that the company would never be able to meet global demand. Eric immediately became uncomfortable and quickly ended the call. While everyone was distracted, Tully sneaked into Solomon and Spider's laboratory. He saw Solomon take a tiny sample of the compound and feel immediate relief, leading him to assume it was a new type of stimulant. After Spider placed the substance in a refrigerator, Tully slipped inside and stole it. Afterward, he collected his purchase from the dealer and left as though nothing had happened. The person monitoring Solomon noticed both Tully and Gina. Meanwhile, after leaving the television station, Eric received a call from the company's chairman, who was also his father. The board of directors was unhappy with the company's damaged reputation due to widespread conspiracy theories, and Eric was told to find a solution immediately if he wanted to keep his job. When Eric returned to the laboratory, he tested a new drug on a mouse, but the mouse died within minutes. Frustrated, he smashed his tablet before his assistant, Angela, entered and informed him that they had traced a call from someone named Lazarus in Luxembourg. Later, Eric received a secret phone call from his son, Max, who communicated with him privately because his parents were divorced. Max told him that he had given money to a poor man on the street, but Eric scolded him harshly and called people like that parasites. The conversation was interrupted when Eric's ex-wife walked in and announced that she was moving to another city. Eric immediately became worried about his son's safety because of the dangers lurking within the red zone. That night, Isla returned home and spent her time staring at an old magazine cover featuring her mother when she was young. She knew the fashion industry only cared about her because she looked so much like her mother. Around that time, she received a call from her father, who was stranded on another continent helping the poor. Isla was upset with him, so when he asked if she had spent the day alone, she abruptly hung up. But afterward, the loneliness truly hit her, and she decided to attend the party after all. At the party, Gina and Tully hid in the bathroom to try the compound they had stolen. Before they could take it, Isla found them together and was furious when she realized they were having an affair. A heated argument broke out, and Tully threw the compound away before he and Gina left. Alone and heartbroken, Isla picked up the compound and swallowed all of it. She then went dancing with Brian in an attempt to make Tully jealous, but he didn't seem to care. Later, Brian tried to hook up with another girl in the bathroom, but Isla suddenly walked in because she was feeling extremely sick. The other girl left, and Brian offered Isla some water, but she was disgusted by him. She cursed him out and told him to leave before collapsing onto the floor. Soon afterward, she received a text from Gina asking to talk, but she ignored it. Instead, she submerged herself in cold water to cool down because her entire body felt like it was burning. Meanwhile, Tully finally realized he had lost the compound. While searching for it, he discovered Solomon and his men chasing him through the house. When they reached the bathroom, Isla was hiding underwater. The men beat Tully until he admitted that he had lost the compound. After they left to search the rest of the house, Isla emerged from the water and confessed that she had taken it. Tully immediately informed Solomon, but by the time they returned, Isla had already disappeared. The men refused to believe Tully's story that she had been hiding in the bathtub because no one could possibly stay underwater that long. Suddenly, Tully pulled out a gun. Spider was knocked to the ground, and the weapon accidentally discharged. Tully was shot and began bleeding heavily. Solomon wrapped his leg with a piece of cloth and ordered his men to continue searching the house. Spider then screamed that the police were coming, causing everyone at the party to flee. After Solomon and his men left, Tully regained consciousness and found Isla hiding in the ceiling. She dropped down effortlessly, and Tully noticed a strange mark on her arm. Isla assumed it was simply a side effect of the compound. When she tried to leave, she discovered that Solomon had locked the door behind him. Furious, she punched it and was shocked by the massive hole she created. When she stepped outside the bathroom, she found the men waiting for her. She retreated, smashed through the ceiling with her newfound strength, and escaped. Before leaving, she and Tully took some armidi. They then made their way toward the rooftop. The noise caught the men's attention, and Isla leaped onto a neighboring building. Tully tried to follow, but his injury caused him to fall. Isla reached out and caught him with ease because her arms had become stretchy and sticky. Gina witnessed everything from the street below and rushed around the building to find them. Isla and Tully attempted to escape, but Tully fell again. Isla jumped after him. When Gina arrived, she found Tully dead and assumed Isla had pushed him. She immediately called the police. Isla was forced to flee once more from Solomon's men. She vaulted over walls until she reached the street, where she collapsed in front of Brian's car. He quickly drove her away before the police arrived. The person monitoring Solomon witnessed the entire incident, and now knew about Isla as well. Back at Brian's apartment, he tried to touch Isla while she was still unconscious. She suddenly woke up and struck him, forcing him to back away. Brian mentioned that he had been cut, and that was when Isla noticed a claw hidden beneath the skin of her arm. Terrified, Brian ran away. Isla entered the bathroom and noticed strange patches spreading across her body. No matter how much she washed her face, they wouldn't disappear. Then the claw emerged again, so she grabbed a pair of scissors and cut it off. Afterward, she rushed to the hospital seeking help. A nurse assumed she was seriously ill and needed to be quarantined, so she contacted the authorities. Isla fled and hid inside a patient's room. Using the sticky properties of her hands, she climbed up the wall and concealed herself in the ceiling. She begged the patient not to say anything, and the woman remained silent until a security guard passed by. After the guard left, Isla gave the patient all the remaining armidi she had. At the same time, Eric received a full report about everything that had happened involving Tully and Isla because he was the one who had sent the observer to monitor them. Brian also told the police about the claw he had seen on Isla's arm, which made Eric even more interested in her. Meanwhile, Solomon and Spider arrived at Brian's apartment and discovered the severed claw in the sink. Eventually, Isla found Gina, who immediately ran when she saw her. Isla chased her, then collapsed to the ground and tried to explain that she needed help. Gina reluctantly allowed Isla into her apartment. When Isla looked at herself in the mirror, she realized her skin had become much worse, and her fingernails were beginning to deform. Soon afterward, she developed an overwhelming craving for meat. She grabbed a burger from Gina's refrigerator and devoured it. Then she took her phone and sent a message asking about Tully, knowing that Solomon's men had possession of his phone. When the subject of the affair came up again, another argument erupted between Gina and Isla. Isla said that everything in her life had been fake and that she had believed Gina was her only true friend, but she had been wrong. Gina replied that while Isla might be spoiled, she had a habit of hurting people without realizing it. When the microwave beeped, Isla angrily grabbed its door and ripped it completely off. At that moment, Solomon called, and Isla agreed to meet him later. Gina wanted to contact the police, but Isla stopped her aggressively, making Gina realize she had become afraid of her own friend. Meanwhile, in Luxembourg, Eric's men searched an abandoned room for Lazarus but found only the tablet used to make the mysterious call. A recorded message mocked Eric, claiming that its creator had enough resources to manufacture Armidi independently, and that Eric was simply afraid of competition. After hearing the message, Eric called his father and requested an extra week to complete the new formula because he wanted more time with his son before the boy moved away. His father refused and granted him only 3 days. Back with Isla, she was now eating raw meat while Gina attempted to track Tully's phone. Before leaving to meet Solomon, Isla told Gina that once this entire ordeal was over, she never wanted to see her again. Later, Isla met with Solomon, who distracted her long enough for Spider to sneak up from behind and kidnap her. Gina witnessed the abduction from a distance, and used her tracking software to follow them. Solomon and Spider brought Isla back to their home, a move that was also observed by one of Eric's agents. Isla was tied to a chair, but she managed to grow another claw and break free from her restraints. She then noticed a pile of meat on the table and devoured all of it without cooking it. When Solomon and Spider appeared in the doorway, Isla grabbed a knife and spat a corrosive acidic substance at them, burning Spider's hand. At that moment, the police arrived and began pounding on the door. Solomon handed Spider the last remaining sample of the compound and told her to run. He then tried to convince Isla to trust him, but their conversation was interrupted when the police stormed into the room to arrest Isla for assaulting Brian and for her connection to Tully's death. The officers also found Solomon in the house and arrested him as well, believing he was the leader of the criminal operation. Gina watched her friend being taken away, but she had no idea what to do because she no longer trusted anyone. While in jail, Isla touched her neck and noticed that the strange patches had spread to her ear. Suddenly, her ear fell off and was replaced by a bizarre new one. Horrified, she quickly covered her head with her hood. Solomon explained his goal to Isla, creating an alternative to Armidia that would be available to everyone regardless of social class. Their conversation was interrupted when Eric arrived. He revealed that Solomon had once worked for Ethera. Eric examined Isla's mutations and then paid to have both her and Solomon released from jail. He drove them away in his car, while Spider secretly followed behind. At Ethera's research facility, Eric gave Isla a sedative so he could perform tests on her. Her DNA results showed extensive mutations, confirming that she was no longer fully human. Later, Eric went down to the basement, where one of his men was torturing Solomon. After listing all the crimes that could send him to prison, Eric offered him a chance to return to the company. Solomon refused, insisting that the medicine should be available to everyone regardless of wealth or status. Eric disagreed, arguing that humanity was responsible for destroying the planet and that someone had to decide who deserved to survive. When Isla woke up, half of her face had become mutated. Eric explained that the mutations allowed her to breathe the polluted air naturally and that her body was producing an enzyme that could be used to manufacture Armidi. He then manipulated her emotionally, claiming he had tried to contact her father but nobody could find him. He also suggested that Solomon wasn't helping because he didn't want to share the credit. Unfortunately, Isla believed him and signed the paperwork before falling asleep again. When she woke up later, her enhanced senses allowed her to hear Eric talking to his father outside the room through thick reinforced glass. She learned that Eric didn't merely want to study her, he intended to extract the enzyme from her body, a procedure that could kill her. She also discovered that her father had reported her missing, but Eric had bribed the authorities. Enraged, Isla began smashing against the glass. Eric responded by pumping gas into the room to subdue her. A short time later, Spider arrived at the research center in a truck stolen from the company and pretended she was delivering a shipment. The security guard at the gate was distracted by video games and let her pass without checking. Meanwhile, 2 doctors entered Isla's room to prepare her for surgery, only to discover that her restraints had somehow been broken. Isla woke up and attacked them until she learned where Solomon was being held. When a guard saw the commotion, he triggered the alarm. Isla dragged one of the doctors to the door and used his fingerprint to unlock it before escaping. She reached the basement but heard a guard approaching, so she climbed into the ceiling and hid. When he got close enough, she spat acid at him, knocking him to the ground. The guard tried to draw his weapon, but Isla attacked him again until he lost consciousness. She continued searching until she found Solomon. Once again, he insisted that he wanted the medicine to be available to everyone. When he dismissed her condition as merely a side effect, she shouted at him and slammed him against the wall, demanding to know how this could possibly be better than wearing masks. At the same time, Eric went to a private airport to pick up his son, Max, who was upset because his father had kept him waiting. As soon as they arrived at the research center, Eric learned that Isla had escaped. He left Max with Angela and joined the search teams. Angela refused to stay with Max and left him alone in Eric's office, where he found Isla's pendant. The guards headed toward the tunnels while Solomon guided Isla into the ventilation shafts. Using her sticky hands, she climbed through the vents and pulled Solomon up with her enhanced strength. Together they escaped before the guards spotted them. At the same time, Spider planted several bombs and sent a message warning the company that an explosion would occur in 9 minutes. Angela urged Eric to evacuate the facility, but he believed the bomb threat was merely a distraction. After escaping through the tunnel, Isla and Solomon reached the laboratory. There Solomon used a hologram display to explain that the primary ingredient in Armidi came from a rare species of fly found only in Africa. The insect was naturally immune to polluted air, and Isla was gradually transforming into a human version of that species. The problem was that Ethra's operations had driven the flies to extinction, and synthetic alternatives had failed. That was why Eric was so desperate to get his hands on Isla. Suddenly, one of the bombs exploded. Solomon and Isla immediately fled and soon reunited with Spider. Moments later, a cloud of gas began filling the dome, forcing them to run upstairs and hide in a bathroom. Inside, they found Max hiding from the explosion. Isla comforted him and jokingly told him she was a fairy. Reassured, Max handed her the pendant he had found. The group continued moving through the building until Eric appeared with a rifle. Solomon and Spider managed to avoid him, but Isla grabbed Max and used him as a human shield. She threatened Eric, saying she could harm the boy with her mutations if he didn't back off. However, Eric cared more about his work than anything else and fired anyway. Isla dodged the shot and released Max. The boy distracted his father long enough for Isla to leap between floors and reunite with Solomon and Spider inside an elevator. The three escaped to the parking garage, climbed into a truck, and sped away. Guards opened fire on the tires in an attempt to stop the vehicle without harming Isla. The truck eventually flipped over, but when the guards reached it, they discovered that only Spider had been inside. Meanwhile, Solomon and Isla had escaped into the forest. There, Isla used her newly developed claws to tear through a security fence. All of the guards chased after them except one, who stayed behind to watch Spider. Pretending to be sick, she waited until he got close enough, then attacked him, knocked him unconscious, and escaped. Eventually, Solomon and Isla reached a bridge. Solomon told her to jump, but she refused to leave him behind. He then revealed his own mutated arm and confessed that he had taken some of the compound because he had been too afraid not to. He admitted he wasn't even sure he would survive. Solomon handed Isla the final remaining sample and told her to find Lazarus. Before jumping into the river, Isla gave him the pendant and successfully escaped. Soon afterward, the guards arrived and captured Solomon. Eric decided to use him to create an even more advanced mutation. Later, Gina found an envelope outside her apartment door containing the earrings she and Isla had shared. At the same time, Spider hijacked a television broadcast and warned the public that humanity needed to change if it wanted to avoid extinction. Meanwhile, Isla developed a pair of wings and began using them to search for Lazarus. In the end, it was revealed that Lazarus was actually Angela all along. And that is the end of the movie. Thank you for watching, and don't forget that your opinion matters to us. Be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel for more content.